Gary Williams here. Some friends of mine are making a difference in the community, and one of the ways they're doing that is helping to sponsor this podcast. Petroselli Homes Realty Group is a boutique brokerage service located in downtown Niles. They offer a personal and intentional touch to the home buying and selling market. They take the time to learn each client's story, much like this podcast, because to them, the first step in linking buyers to the home of their dreams starts with understanding and a great deal of trust. John and Jennifer Petroselli have had the honor of helping countless buyers and sellers make effective real estate decisions to plant their roots, raise their families, expand their wealth, or simply relax and retire. So if what I've described is what you might be looking for in a realtor, I suggest getting in touch with Petroselli Homes on Niles Boulevard in downtown Niles. Now, coming to you straight from Fremont, California, this is the Fremont Podcast, dedicated to telling the stories of the past and present of the people and places of the city of Fremont, one conversation at a time. Now, here's your host, Ricky B.
Hello, Fremont. You are listening to episode 21 of the Fremont Podcast, and I am excited to be back with you for another conversation. I am actually right now in the studio of Gary Williams, who you just heard introduce this this episode. And I was going to say he needs no introduction except for his own, which he's
a legend in his own mind.
That's right. Gary, it's so good to have you on the podcast. I have been wanting to have you on this podcast ever since the beginning. I mean, when we sat right here, right. I don't know, 5 months ago, and we just discussed what it might look like to have a Fremont podcast, and you encouraged me in like moving forward with it, and I am just so
this
grateful.
Is payback.
This
right?
is payback.
Yeah, thank you.
That's payback. So Gary, it's good to have you. Everyone hears your voice each week.
Wow, that's true.
Yeah, they hear your voice each week, and it's exciting to hear your story now. Hear a little bit about you. So
great.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Always like to chit chat. So
yeah.
This is just another opportunity.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Fremont. So the first time that I met you was like I've met others who I've had on the podcast at Devout Coffee, although it was very, very quick. You were riding your bike. I think you may have even gotten a coffee or just leaving Devout, and I met you. Someone said, "That's Gary Williams. He lives close by." And then after you left, somebody said he does announcing, voiceovers, and so on.
Right.
And then I think you fast forward like 5 or 6 years, and I was always wondering who was this Gary guy that I randomly met. And
sorry to disappoint you after. Yeah, everybody thinks, hey, he's 6'5". Looks like George Clooney.
Right,
no,
right.
Not really.
Yeah. So when did you move to Fremont? When what's your story? How did you get here?
Born and raised in the Bay Area. My mother was born at Stanford Hospital. I was born in Stanford Hospital, and then grew up in Menlo Park. And halfway through my junior year of high school, my parents announced that we were moving to Los Altos Hills, and I'd gone to school with all these people since kindergarten. I said, what? Anyway, long story short, I ended up going to high school in Los Altos, and just for the last year and a half, and then got married. Fast forward a number of years later,
okay.
And then we moved to the East Bay because we didn't have the millions of dollars that we needed at the time to buy a house on the peninsula. So we ended up moving to Fremont in 1987. And we live in the Niles area. I was doing some work for a company out in Pleasanton, and driving through Niles Canyon, and happened to, I thought, hey, I should look at some homes. I had just gotten a contract with the Channel 5 in San Francisco. Was really the break that I needed, that kind of launched my career, and drove through this Rancho Arroyo and Niles area, and I said, wow, this is a beautiful area. And we were living in Newark at the time, and the job kind of enabled us to to move over here, and we've been here ever since. We've been in the same house since '87, and love this area.
That's awesome. So tell me, besides actually going through the stage of puberty and realizing that you actually have a voice that people enjoy listening to, like how does one get into broadcasting or voiceovers? Or I mean, you said that you had a break with News Channel 5. Like, what did that process look like for you? Did you major in something that had to do with media, or how did that work?
Yeah, I did. I graduated from UCLA in communications and always was interested in radio as a kid. I remember listening all the time to sports-related stuff. I think initially I had my sights on becoming a sportscaster, but that didn't pan out for a variety of reasons. Not because I just didn't want to travel all over the place. I started. So long story short, out of college, I worked at KCBS in San Francisco as a writer. You're not going to get on the air when you're 21 years old in a major market like San Francisco. So they were joking, Gary, if you want to get on the air, you got to go to a smaller market and work your way up. Okay. So one day we're in the newsroom and I see there's a job opening for the news director in Visalia. I don't even know where Visalia was. It's the capital. It's the county seat of Tulare County in the Central Valley. So I said, hey, I'm interested in that. People are like, you got to be kidding. I said, well, you told me I should go out. Long story short, went down to Visalia for an interview, and 2 weeks later, I was the news director of the radio station, the only radio station in town. I wasn't just the news director. I was in the news department. And that's kind of how the career got started. I was there for...
You're a one-stop shop.
Yes. I was there for a year and then was on vacation in Las Vegas. And it just so happened that the guy who had preceded me in Visalia had taken a job in Vegas. So I went, when I was in Las Vegas, I said hello to him. He said, are you looking for a job? I said, isn't everybody? We're always looking. I'm always looking for a job if the opportunity's right. And he said, well, I don't have something here, but there's an all-news radio station that's starting there, and I know the news director, and he'd probably hire you on the spot. And I said, I don't have anything but shorts and beach walkers. He said, it doesn't matter. It's 175 degrees here, so people are used to that. So I went over and interviewed for that, and again, 2 weeks later, I was moved to Vegas, and I was only there for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Same thing. And that's when I realized I'm not sure I want to do this, because in order to kind of move up in that business, you got to move all over the place. And I'm a homebody. I like being in one place. I heard all these stories of these, because Vegas was a place at the time where there was a lot of conventions. Even though it's a relatively small market, a lot of stuff happens in Vegas. So you get a lot of newsmakers in there. And so there would be a lot of national reporters coming into that area that I would get a chance to converse with. And all of them, it just seems like they were never home. They were on their second or third marriages. And I'm like, I wasn't married at the time. I'm like, this is not what I want to do. Yeah. So then I ended up coming back to the Bay Area and worked for an ad agency for about 6 or 7 years as a copywriter and an account person. My father owned the agency, so I had an in.
Wow.
And I did that, and I realized I didn't really want to. My heart wasn't really in that. And then we were getting ready to go on vacation one day, and I got a call from a recording studio who said, "Hey, we have got this little bit part for in a radio spot. Would you be willing to do it?" And I thought, well, yeah. I mean, my wife said, "Hey, we can wait an hour to go on vacation." So I went and did this little bit spot in a commercial, and the guy who had the main spot in it was an older guy, and he pulled me aside. He said, "Gary, you could make a living doing this." And I was kind of shocked. Why? It's all I could think about during my vacation was, whoa, really? So when I got back, I took some material that I'd had, and I took it to Russ. Russ Holcomb was his name, and he listened to it, and I left about midnight from his home. He had a little recording studio in his house in Redwood City at the time, and I came back with my first demo tape, and I was shocked. I said, "Russ, what do I owe you?" And he said, "You don't owe me anything. People were good to me when I was your age.
Wow.
I'm just returning the favor." I've never forgotten that. I've tried to do the same thing.
Yeah,
that if
absolutely.
somebody's bold enough or willing to call me or email me or text me and want to find out about how this business works, I'm willing to talk about it. I'm not going to give them my contact information, but if you're interested in this business, I've managed to carve out a decent career, and I'm happy to pass on the info.
I feel like you did that with me. I mean, I'm not into voiceovers or anything right now, but I feel like you did that with me.
I don't need the competition. I just need my piece of the pie. There you go. No, I just, I remember thinking about one of the things when I was thinking through a good podcast, because there's some things that I feel like when I listen to a podcast are they just capture my attention. They make me automatically think this podcast is a quality podcast, and some of that has to do with the production quality. Some of it has to do with the audio quality, how what the room sounds like, and that sort of thing. But I just thought for me, it's like I will oftentimes listen to a podcast, and within the first 20 seconds, I know whether I'm going to like it or not. And it has to do with what is the quality that the person has put into the production of it, and I feel like that quality is going to ripple throughout everything they do, the conversation, the journalism, and that sort of thing. Well, I will tell you this: yours is very well produced.
Oh, thanks,
I noticed that right out of when I listened to the first episode. I remember telling you, hey, I think you're onto something here, and it's because it is. It sounds good. It's well produced, and that makes a difference.
I appreciate it. And that's what I wanted. I wanted people to listen to it, and I don't know how many people, when I tell them to listen to the Fremont podcast for the first time, they're like, "Wait a minute, you got Gary to do your intro?"
They're easily impressed. I'll tell you that.
Or if they don't know you, they'll say, "How did you get somebody to do the intro for you?" And
you paid me $5,000.
I know, right?
What do you mean? It's like anything else. Money talks. No, he didn't. No, he didn't pay me anything. I did it as a freebie.
No, you did.
I did it as a community.
Yeah,
I'm all about the community. You got to give back a little bit. Come on.
That was my point. Is that you actually gave me a foot up. You allowed me to ride on your shoulders of your career and say, hey, let's get you started on something that's good, and I appreciate that.
You want to pay it forward a little bit.
That's right.
You? I think so.
When I first started hearing about you, and I wanted to hunt you down and figure out who you were and try to figure out how I might be able to connect with you on this. I started hearing things like you were the stadium announcer for the Raiders, or you were announced at Cal Berkeley.
Right.
So what are some of the things that you've done over the last 20, 30 years that you've enjoyed?
You're dating me now. Right? I don't know if I can remember that.
When I say 20, 30 years, I mean starting at 14 years old. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for the trying to get on my good side now. Well, I don't think anybody starts out. Very few people start out trying to. Oh, hey, I'm going to get into the voiceover business. Usually. You kind of get into it by accident. I think you're born with a decent voice. Mm-hmm. But you don't necessarily, if you listen to a lot of radio commercials and stuff that's on the air now, you don't have to have this big, deep voice. I happen to have, that's just what I have. And so, but many people, for people that are producing commercials, they don't want people that sound like an announcer. They just want somebody that sounds like the guy next door. I don't sound like the guy next door. I've figured that out during my career.
Unless I ask one of your neighbors,
announcer.
Then one of your neighbors would say you sound like the guy.
Fortunately, there's more. A quick story.
Yeah.
I'm doing a number of years ago doing a series of Bank of America commercials up in a studio in San Francisco, and we're doing like 5 spots, and they're very good, and they're using comedians to do the commercial, and I just come at the end and do what's called the tag, Bank of America, member of DIC. So I'm listening to the spots and at the studio, and each of the comedians are coming out doing their thing, and then one of them comes out and he's leaving, and I said, hey, Bob, these are hilarious spots. You guys are having all the fun. I'm just the straight guy. And he looked at me, and he said, Gary, I just went in there and recorded one spot, and then somebody else went in, Dana Carvey went in and recorded the other one. And, we're all getting paid for one commercial. They're taking your Bank of America, member of DIC. They're taking your 5-second tag and putting that on 5 commercials. His point was, don't complain. I'm getting paid 5 times what those guys are getting. So I learned very early on. It's like, okay, maybe I'm not the comedian guy, but I'm getting paid decent for what I'm doing. So I never complained since then.
That's great. So who have you announced for? Like, where have you? Where's been some of your venues or some of the things you've done around the Bay Area?
It never started out as a sports thing. That kind of evolved. First, it was just my bread and butter has always been the corporate world, just because that's the nature of the beast in the Silicon Valley. So Hewlett-Packard, Lockheed, Apple Computer, the list goes on, Network Appliance. If you're doing what I'm doing and you're decent at all, you're going to get a lot of work from corporate people, and that's been the case. I use the analogy of L.A. and New York are use a baseball analogy, that's the major leagues. The San Francisco Bay Area is good. It's a AAA, but there may not be as much work, but there's plenty of it. And if you're getting work on a regular basis, you can carve out a nice career. So corporate stuff, and then finally got an agent, and that, you audition for material, and I've done stuff over the years for plenty of local stuff, but some national stuff. I did a funny spot that I still have someplace for Doritos. It was a scream of Doritos. The whole thing, I was hoarse by the time I left, but they were, again, it was a pretty good commercial, and the bigger the market, the more it pays. So that's all. So I've done stuff for automobile companies, Audi and Dole Pineapple, but then the sports stuff kicked in. I did the Stanford PA for their football team for 10 years, and then the Raiders called, and I was a lifelong 49er fan, grew up on the peninsula, and my brother-in-law has 6 season tickets to the Niners games, and when he found out, he got wind that I got this Raiders deal, he called me, and how could you do this? I can't believe that you're and I'd never been to a Raiders game in my life, and I said to him, hey, Dave, it's all about the silver and black. What are you talking about? I said, Dave, it's all about the silver. How can you say that? Because the check cleared.
Yeah, right.
He understood. So I managed to parlay that Raiders thing into a 16-year thing. And I used a neighbor, a guy that I've been involved in the Niles Centerville Little League forever. I have 4 boys. So I coached and was on the board and umpired there for, even when they were gone, I was involved in the league for 25 or 30 years. And one of my good friends, Neil Duffy, who lives in Niles too, was born and raised here. He's my spotter, and he's just been loyal. We did it for 16 years until the Raiders moved to Vegas, and now we're doing Cal. So it's been a
wow.
I'm not sending my kids to college on the money that I'm getting for those, but it's been a labor of love, and it's been great. Too bad the Raiders weren't better, but it was still enjoyable. It's just I just pinched myself many times. Like, there are not these many jobs. There are only 32 of these in the United States, and can't believe that I had this opportunity.
Yeah. So what has been a job? You said a labor of love. What are some jobs that you look back at over your career and you think that's just one that I really enjoyed, like that particular experience, or that that connection or that opportunity was just one that you're really thankful that you had to be. You got the opportunity to be part of?
There are a lot of them. I mean, most of and it's probably true in any profession, most of the stuff that you do is probably just a little bit more what you consider boilerplate, regular corporate stuff that's a little bit dry, and but it pays the bills, and that's kind of my bread and butter. You learn kind of early on in your career in this thing, what's your money voice? What is the voice that people are hiring you for? And I learned early on, like I said earlier, I'm an announcer. I sound like a narrator. So that's the stuff that I get. But then there's these few diamonds that come in. A lot of them I ended up doing a series of stuff. I hooked up with this company that was doing award ceremonies for their employees. And I remember getting a call from the production company saying, hey, Gary, we got this award ceremony that we want you to do in the next, it was like in a month from then. And you need to read. We'll have people from all over the country all over the world coming to this, all our sales reps, and we give awards. I thought, that sounds kind of fun. I'm thinking it's going to be at the Santa Clara Convention Center or whatever, where they're meeting. I say, hey, this sounds fun. Where is it? He said, it's in Tahiti. That was kind of the reaction I had. I paused, and I remember thinking, you got to be kidding me. He said, yeah, we need you to fly to Tahiti. We'll do 1 day of rehearsal, and then the job is 1 day, and then you'll fly back. I'm like, are you serious? So, fast forward, I flew to Tahiti. We rehearsed 1 day. We stayed at an absolute 5-star hotel there. And then, 2 days later, I flew back home, and it was just a whirlwind. That was an awesome experience. And the same company we ended up doing, the next time we did it in Bermuda, not the Bahamas, in Bermuda, which is owned by the British out off the coast of North Carolina. Yeah. We did one there, same thing. And then the next one was on a cruise ship. I flew to Portugal, got on this Regent cruise, completely first class.
Wow.
And it was going from Portugal along the Spanish coast and eventually ended up in England. The production crew, we were on it for like 3 days. They booted the workers off someplace in Spain. But then I flew home, and the next one we were going to do it in Ireland. It was going to be in Dublin.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, I'm going to ride this thing as long as so I asked, can I take my wife on this next one? And they said, yes, you can. So now I'm telling her, honey, we are going. We'll extend it a little bit. You just won't believe where we're going to stay. I don't hear from the production company. What's going on? The company, not the production company, but the business, it got sold to somebody else, and it ended. But it was fun while it lasted.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
So those were
that's cool.
Those were ones that just like, wow, I didn't see this coming, but it was. Boy, those were a lot of fun.
Wow, that's awesome.
And those are live, which makes it, just like the Raiders or the football stuff, as opposed to, we're sitting in a recording studio. If you make a mistake, you can stop the tape and redo it. But there's a certain, I can see why famous actors that don't have to do it want to work on the stage rather than in a movie or on TV where it's taped and you can do it again. There's something about doing something before a live audience that you can't replicate.
Yeah, there's an energy there.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. And that's why people do that, because there's a little bit of a high wire act.
Yeah.
If you make a mistake,
oh
well, and I've made a few of those.
Yeah.
Perfect. When we're doing one of the Raiders games, you introduce the visiting team. You always remember your faux pas. You don't remember the high points. I don't know why that is, but we're doing a Raiders game, and I'm introducing it. It's the New York Jets are playing the Raiders at the Coliseum, and you introduce the other team, and you just do it kind of low key, and the massive boos rain down. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome whatever. So this is the Jets. So at the beginning, this is the very beginning of my talk. The Jets come out of the field, and I say, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the New York Giants. And my producer looks at me with this, his mouth is agape, and I realize what I've done, and quickly say the New York Jets. I will say this. It got better as the day went on, because it couldn't have been very worse. Couldn't have been very bad. It's like, wow, what a way to start
Oh, my goodness.
And that's just one of those things where it's live. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, they're the visiting team. So
that's true. At least I didn't say it introduced the Raiders as the 49ers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So we're in your little studio in your house. Yeah,
this is my palatial. Okay, it's 12 by 12.
It's beautiful. Yeah,
but it does the trick.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can come out here if I'm in trouble in the house, and I have
doubles
a hot
as a
plate.
doghouse.
Yes, it doubles, and I can get a hot plate and eat out here if my wife's mad at me.
That's great.
Yeah, no, this was the best thing I ever did, building this thing in the backyard.
That's great. I love it.
It's been good.
So when you come back from Portugal or Tahiti or whatever, and you come back to Niles or you come back to Fremont, what do you enjoy? Like what is? I saw you the other day, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was actually it was so funny because I was driving with my family, and I think we were talking about the podcast. And I look up and I see you riding your bike down by Quarry Lakes.
Yeah, I do that.
And so what do you do in Fremont?
You just hit it on the head right now. My wife and I, we have walked through the quarry where we live, a quarter mile from Rancho Arroyo Park, and then you're in this wilderness area. There's never been another place like it that we've seen. We walk in that. We go on a walk, usually at the end of the day, for 3 to 4 miles, hour and 15 minutes religiously. We've done it for 20 years, and we do it, if we're in town and we can, 7 days a week. So that is a huge, what people don't know, that sitting right out here is just this pristine, not wilderness, but a wonderful, wonderful place to
nice.
To enjoy nature and just to kind of reconnect. And we do it all the time, and then I ride my bike all around. And the other thing that I do a lot is I walk downtown. I'm a little bit older now, so my time isn't as, my 4 kids are gone, and I'm not doing as much work as I've done in the past, so I have a little bit more free time. So I spend a lot of time walking around Niles and going downtown and frequenting some of the establishments there. Same thing. I want to try and encourage these businesses to be able to thrive, the local businesses, and the way you do that is by giving them some of your business. So
right.
I try and do that. So I mean that, and just like I indicated before, the Little League that we were totally involved with. That was just so enjoyable over the years. It's well run. It's my kids have such fond memories, as do their parents. It really was a lot of fun. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So what projects are you working on now? Like, as we start thinking about what you're doing here, maybe in the future, do you have anything that you're looking forward to besides just enjoying?
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of semi-retired now, but one of the things during the pandemic that has been a boon is, I've always thought, hey, I should, and people have said, Gary, you should do some audio books. And I've never really done that for a variety of reasons. One, unless you're really reading big books, you don't just start reading big books. You got to kind of work your way up. I was like, frankly, they don't pay enough, and I can read a commercial and take 2 minutes and get paid what I'd probably read a whole book for.
Wow, yeah.
So I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that now. But now that I've, I'm a little bit more, I don't have to worry so much about that, then I thought, no, I'm going to do that. So during the pandemic, I started kind of promoting myself and there are a couple of websites that you use. So I've probably read over the last 2 years 30 books on tape.
Wow.
And they range, most of them are nonfiction, historical. I try and audition or read books that I like, obviously.
Right.
I'm not, and that are subject matters that I'm interested in. So I'm interested in history. So I've read a lot of history books and a few thrillers. I hooked up with this one guy who's written a trilogy, a 3-book kind of a murder mystery thing that's very well done. And he wrote another book, 2 other books.
Huh.
One was a fictional account of this unbelievable character who was a astronaut. And of course, this is not real. He went to Stanford, played baseball, played for the Raiders in the Super Bowl, was an astronaut, went to the moon. It sounds, it was so funny to read it. I don't even remember what's the name of the book. I forgot it. But anyway, so that's been a long-winded way of saying I've been reading a lot of books recently, and that keeps me out of my wife's hair and gives me something to do, and been traveling a little bit.
Yeah, that's great.
But, yeah.
That's great. Well, you said your kids are gone. Do any of them live in the area here as well, or
yeah,
do they live?
They've a lot of them have flown the coop. I have 2 of them that are firefighters. 2 of my 4 boys.
Okay.
So one of them is living in the Bay Area and working here, and he's in El Cerrito. And then my other kids are one's in Los Angeles, one's in move. Oh, he was renting a house in Niles, and it's tough now for kids these days to be able to
it is.
to buy anything in just the whole Bay Area. They were living around the corner, and told us that they just got finished about a year ago, moved to a suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Wow.
Beautiful little town called Fort Mill, South Carolina. But those are two of my grandkids.
Yeah.
I said, hey, Scott, I don't care if you go, but you leave those grandkids with us for at least 3 days, because after that, it's like the famous thing, fish and relatives stink after 3 days. And then one of my other sons lives in Dallas, Texas.
Okay. So that's awesome.
Yeah, wow. But this has been a wonderful, wonderful place to raise kids. They all went to Niles School and local schools here in the Bay Area. We got a lot involved at Niles, and this has been a wonderful, wonderful place to raise children.
Well, I can't tell you enough how thankful I am for the opportunity to have you have you as part of the podcast.
Is this a way of saying it's the time's up, Gary? You're
long-winded.
It's time to go get it.
No, it's been great. I've loved these stories. This is really, really awesome. Yeah, no, I just want to say that I appreciate you being a part of the podcast. I will say, you. Especially the first few weeks that the podcast was launched and it was, establishing its roots, I would get text messages from you, just kind of asking how things were going and encouraging me, and that really meant a lot to me. I really appreciate that. But then every time I prepare and put together a new episode and I hear your voice, I just am always grateful that you made the opportunity to be a part of this, and I'm just really glad for that, and I'm glad to have you now on the podcast to share a bit of your story. So appreciate that so much.
Ricky, flattery will get you an intro voiceover, right? No, I'm happy to help, and I'm glad to see. I like what you're doing, so keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, and I hope we get to hear more from you again. I think it would be really great to have you on here, and perhaps there's more opportunities that you could share of your stories or the connections that you have in the future. That'd be really great.
You think people really want to hear that? I guess we'll find out. Okay.
I know they would.
Fair enough. You've been listening to the Fremont Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever it is that you listen so you don't miss an episode. And if you're so inclined, leave a kind review so that others can find the podcast. To stay connected with us, you can find links to our social media and other content at thefremontpodcast.com. This episode was hosted, edited, and produced by Ricky B. Music provided through Soundstripe.com. I'm Gary Williams. Join us next week on the Fremont Podcast.
Muggins Media.